inaugural FML, aka Friday Morning Live. My name is Emma BF. I am the CEO and founder of Rise Up Leadership, where it is our mission to support women in tech to step into leadership and own their power. If you're new to my space, new to my world, you may be wondering what the BF stands for in Emma BF. It is, in fact, my name. The full kahuna is Bloxburg Fire Ovid. But since I was a kid, when my close girlfriends were also named Emma, I officially got the nickname Emma BF. When I worked with kids in drama camp earlier on in my career, I was known as Emma BF, my best friend. And when I worked with the 7-year-old girls, they would always chuckle and say, "Ooh, Emma boyfriend." But today we are here to have the conversations that no one else is having. Because, at least in my experience in supporting and coaching women in tech, the tech sector right now and the workplace more broadly is filled with behaviors, actions, and leadership that does not serve feminine beings. And we're moving beyond the gender binary here. So when I talk about women, when I talk about feminine beings, I am assuming that we can understand that we all have feminine and masculine energy together. And so it's less about gender and more about how do we create psychologically safe in work environments for feminine beings to truly be at their best. A little bit more background about me so that we can get to know each other. And then we'll have a guest joining us on FML. I'm so excited to introduce you to her, but she's a secret guest that you won't know anything about until you actually get to meet her. I want to bring you into a moment that really changed the game for me. And I was standing in probably one of the most beautiful homes I've ever been in a suburb outside of Boston. And it was one of those houses that when you walk into it, you really wonder if you walked into an Architecture Digest house. Pale blue walls, beautiful kitchen, and Mark Rothko's on the wall. I was 21 at the time, 22, in my first job out of college. And I had been invited by my then boss at the time, who was the executive director of a small nonprofit that I worked at. I was in her home. And I was standing in this most immaculate house, and we were talking about work. But at the time, I was her executive assistant, her administrative assistant, and I was fighting for a $1,000 raise. I was fighting for this $1,000 raise that I thought I deserved. And while I was standing there with her in her immaculate house, she told me that I would not be receiving a $1,000 raise. In that moment, I felt like a puddle on the floor. I felt like, who am I? I must be doing such a crappy job to not go from $32,000 a year to $33,000 a year. And in that moment, I questioned everything about who I was, my value, my place, and it was a truly out-of-body experience. Y'all let me know in the chat if you've ever had a moment like that where somebody reflects back to you your worst insecurities and you thought, wow, I really must suck. I really, really must suck. Fast forward, I ended up leaving that organization and had to continue to fight for raises, promotions that felt like they shouldn't be that hard. And what I sit with often with my clients is they'll come to me with issues with raises, promotions, how do I get this next job? And really what they're fighting is this internal battle of knowing what they want, why they deserve it, and the audacity to either leave a toxic workplace, go out on their own, take a sabbatical, whatever it is to help get them out of whatever that psychologically unsafe place that we've been so accustomed to working at. And so when I think about my mission and my vision to supporting women in tech to step into leadership and own their power, it is deeply rooted in my understanding that whatever I believe about myself is often a direct correlation to the results that I create in my career and in my life. Because at the time, I did not have the tools, I did not have the coaching, and I did not have the community to be able to help me discern within myself what is my shit to process? What are other people's things to process? You ever heard the not my circus, not my monkeys? Right? That discernment and my ability to question and ask what is within my control, what is in with my choice, what is it within my agency to be able to make changes in my life, and what is clearly somebody else's problem, which at the time and now I can clearly say that like the reason why that woman did not give me a $1,000 raise actually had nothing to do with me. I heard for years about how she mistreated employees, how she undervalued people's salaries, and it continued. But at the time, I took it so personally. And I think that's really what I want to talk with y'all about today is when we talk about FML, we think about those moments where we go, oh my gosh, hand, palm to face. What am I going to do in my career? What am I going to do in my life? What am I going to do with people who simply don't get how epic I am? And what do we do in that moment? So that's the conversation we're going to be having today here on LinkedIn Live. It is pretty antithetical to the traditional LinkedIn content where it's like, here are your top 4 ways to improve your job search. Here are your top 5 communication tips. Like, no, this is a place for us to take off the mask, for us to bring down the curtain, for us to really just be talking in a circle with each other and talking about the real stuff that is going on in our lives, in our careers, so that we cannot feel alone, so that we feel in community, and more importantly, that we can learn from each other's experiences, learn from each other's stories, and from there, source, discern. I think of like anybody have a Harry Potter fans in the house? You know, when they would be able to put their wand to their head and just like remove a memory and be like, oh, let it go. That's my wish for y'all, is that you have the tools, you have the community, and you have the coaching to be able to process whatever you're processing in real time, to then let it go so that you can get clear on what type of career, lifestyle you want, and then have that internal belief, that inner confidence, and that knowing that you can take action towards it no matter what other people around you are saying. So that was a little bit of context, a little bit about me. If you want to share any type of things that are resonating with you, go ahead and put it into the chat so that we know you are here with us. We're seeing some lovely engagement here on LinkedIn Live. 26, 27 of y'all are here. What the numbers going up? We about to have so much fun. Okay. So you can get a little teaser here of what we're talking about. But since we're talking FML, since we are Friday morning, I want y'all to be relaxing, grab a cocktail. It's like whatever you want. Maybe it's a Bloody Mary morning. I've got my water, I've got my candle lit, and I'm going to be bringing on a real life human, a woman who has made such an impact in my life. In fact, she was the first coach that I ever worked with, which after 10 years of leadership experience, I had never had a positive interaction with a coach. My only experience of a coach was an executive coach on an executive leadership team that I was on in Washington, D.C. And I mean, let's just talk about blatant sexism. I was the only woman on that team. And I remember, and I was the youngest by about 20 years. And this executive coach basically told me that I didn't have what it took to be in leadership and that I was not a team player when it came to our leadership team. Well, that was my experience with coaching. I was like, why would I ever pay somebody to tell me those things? No, no, no. But then I met the incredible Mandy Nourse. And when you see Mandy Nourse come on, you are literally going to be like, who's this mermaid goddess queen. Well, she's an incredible mother of 2. She's a badass business owner, and she has been working in the startup space, in the transformational personal development, professional growth space for 6 to 7 years. It's like I kind of want to say a decade. And I'm bringing her on because she helped me gather my thoughts and initiatives and ideas on what I wanted to create here with y'all. And she is in alignment that like we got to have real conversations and we got to have fun while doing it. Because if we are not having fun, we are actually perpetuating a lot of white supremacy and misogyny in the professional development space that tells women, that tells non-binary folks, that tells disabled people of color that you have to be serious all the time. And you must learn the strategies and the tactics and the data to be able to grow your career. No, good sir, madam, whoever, that is perpetuating systems of oppression that tell me that I am not safe. It is not safe for me to be my full self when I am angry, when I am confused, when I am joyful, when I am sad. There is such a lack of permission to be fully ourselves at work. And I get it. We're at work. We get to have boundaries. Your friends, your colleagues do not need to be your friends. Your boss does not to be your friends, but you get to feel psychologically safe within your space and within yourself in order to create the career that you want. And Mandy, in my opinion, is an embodiment of this. She's also so much fun. So what we're going to be doing is for the next 10 minutes, Mandy and I are going to be shooting the shit together with you. Because that's actually how we learn, is we take off the mask, we relax, and we're in community together. So my invitation for you is for you to let each other know in the chat right now where you are calling in from and what brought you here today. Where are you based and what brought you here today to FML, to Friday Morning Live, the inaugural episode? We're going to do 8 episodes together, week over week, same time, same place. Replays will be available on YouTube, and I will be sharing a link later for y'all to join my email list so that you get the first exclusive events as we go through. So go ahead, jump into the chat. Where are you based and what brought you here today? As those come into the chat, I'm going to bring on Mandy. And my first question to you, love, hello, beautiful.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. We can see you. We are beautiful. I want to know from you what resonated in what I shared. What's alive in you right now?
Oh my gosh. So, first of all, your introduction, so beautiful. Thank you so much. Such an honor to like be in your orbit for such a long period of time, but not really. If you know me, I took notes. So I'm like, oh my God, we gotta talk about this. And then you're like 10 minutes. So I don't know. If you know me, and I see Ray in the chat, I see Leandria in the chat. If you know me, like I am a talker. So I'm like, we need to write a book on like everything you just said. 10 minutes is not enough time. Yeah, I feel like all over the map is what's alive in me. It's like I had moments where I'm like, oh, like heartbreak, moments of relatability where I'm like, girl, I feel you. Moments of like that, like I made a note like scraps vibe, like, oh, I'm only worthy of scraps, right? Like $1,000 raise. Come on. There's something else going on there. Worthiness, boundary setting, masculine and feminine for sure. There's loads we could unpack there around like how do you do that in a workspace? How do you weave in the masculine and the feminine? I feel like in a workspace it's so masculine if you really understand. And I know some of your folks in the chat get this. Like if you really understand masculine and feminine energy, masculine, very like purposeful, driving, creating, but creating with a like, I'm focused on that and that is all I am focused on. Compared to feminine, that's much more like relationship, bringing in the people, bringing in the players, working together. And you know me, like I'm not going to go on a tear about the importance of relationship, but it's like the number
Let's talk
one.
about it though. Let's talk about it because I think a lot of people right now are like, okay, I have a goal. Maybe I want to get a promotion. Maybe I want to take a break. Maybe I want to get a paid sabbatical. Maybe I want to get a raise. But it's like, if I don't have clarity on what that goal is and how to get there, I feel like so many people can get stuck in the tactics, the strategies. But tell me for you, what's the perspective of how relationships feed into that?
I mean, you know, Ray's probably like chuckling over there. It's everything. How we relate to one another is everything. Like our ability to communicate, to inspire, to like, I mean, you know, there's like I would say like degrees of how we even communicate that, right? Like, you know, there's sales, there's like what you and I and some of your folks know as enrollment, there's persuasion, there's I'm reading a book about arguing and it's like so epic. There's
What's the
arguing.
name of that? You gotta let people know. It's such a good
Oh my gosh.
title.
Thank you for arguing. It's
Thank
so good.
you
If you're
for
in
arguing.
any kind of, it's for everybody. I was like taking notes yesterday. I'm like, who is this for? It is for every person that's in relationship with other people.
What's the premise of it, or what was the takeaway for you?
The premise, like, okay, if it's like real talk, the premise is like how to get what you want.
Get what you want.
Like how to get what you want. Not like, you know, I mean, you could, like I said, there's degrees. There's people who believe that's like manipulation or whatever. But if you're clear on what you want, if you're not in relationship with the people you're in relationship with, and you don't know like what they're listening for or how they receive information or how you can shift them into action,
Mm.
it's going to be much harder to get the thing that you want. You know, and it's like, I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's like basic human and like our animal instincts, right? It's like we're
Can we
driven to
pause
get the thing
there?
we want. Yeah.
Yes, can we pause? I feel like there's not enough conversations about, like, animal behavior in the workplace, and I'm not like, what I'm talking here, I'm gonna introduce a concept that a
I
coach
get my
of mine yeah, this is a concept that a coach of mine introduced me to, and she talked about the predator-prey energy.
Yeah.
And how, like, when our backs are up against the wall, when we're up against a tight deadline, or we're in a really, like, hard project team, crisis is everywhere, people's lizard brains go on, and the question is, am I the predator? Am I the prey? And I do not wanna see a world where it's like we all just think we are predator and prey. I feel like that's part of the, like, lack of understanding of our evolved consciousness. But it was very helpful for me to ask the question when I am in a leadership role and maybe I'm having to navigate conflict or I'm having to really stand my ground on what my values are and what matters to me, whether it's that $1,000 raise or whatever, like, almost how can I embody that, like, a bit more masculine predator energy so that if anything, I create like a force field of protection for myself. And
Yeah.
I don't feel like I'm in a meek prey mode. And I love Planet Earth. So now that like I'm watching Planet Earth with my baby, I'm just looking at it and I'm like, predator prey. Like fanning itself out. It's everywhere. And it's just like when you were talking about that, it made me think about that.
Yeah, there's so many themes like that. Like just hearing you say predator prey, I'm like my brain automatically is like there's got to be a third way, right? Like it can't all be predator, it can't all be prey, but also like, you know, our connotations of words, right? Like what do you think of when you think of a predator? It's like harming, killing, stalk, you know, it's all those things that are negative. It's not like the predator gets the thing they want. The predator is like, my favorite word, the predator is scheming to create the thing that they want. Like they're on the lookout,
Ooh.
they're assessing the environment, right? Like, I mean, and the prey is doing the same thing, right? Like they're
Yes.
looking around, like, am I being threatened? Am I being attacked? Like very
Yes.
different energy. So I
And
wonder, like,
survival skills too, right? Like
yeah, Yeah, and my first thought was like there has to be a third way, but I almost wonder if it's like bringing it back to masculine and feminine, like is there the healthy version of predator? Is there a healthy version of feminine? Is there a healthy version of masculine that works? Is there a healthy, and then of course there's the unhealthy version, like, they're killing and mayhem and chaos and all of that kind of stuff. So I don't know that there needs to be a three. I'm like answering my own question, right? Like there doesn't need to be a third. It's like how do you tap into what is healthy and what is and be have the awareness enough to recognize what is unhealthy and be like,
Mhm.
oh, I am in my unhealthy predator on this conference call, right?
Self-awareness. That's
That like
self-awareness.
That's so key, like a higher level of presence and self-awareness. And even in the book, like the book I was just talking about, I'm like, man, how do you implement all of these skills into every conversation so that you're always creating what you want? And like we talk about win-win, you're also creating win-wins. It's not all about like I get what I want and the other person gets the scraps, like we were saying earlier. Um, it's how does everybody win? And I think that like I'm guessing that speaks to your like what is sustainable
Mm.
thought. From just like a
I
plan
kinda wanna
perspective.
Yeah, I kinda wanna go there 'cause, y'all, can you put the word sustainable in the chat if you're in a space where you're like, "I wanna create sustainability in my life, in my career, like, I don't wanna be on this rat race, hamster wheel." Can you put that in the chat just so we know that who's here? Because I know I've struggled with that. Like, first when I was a technology consultant, then when I was in leadership roles, and then most recently when I started my own business, like, the sustainability of it all really came into question when I was in constant action mode. And so I'm kind of curious if maybe we can take a minute or two to talk about where have we found that equilibrium point
Hmm.
where we feel grounded in both the masculine and the feminine energy, where I feel super solid in who I am and I know that it is sustainable, because I have actually landed in a place where my work-life balance is true. And I know people question that a lot, like, is work-life balance true? Are we calling it something else? Work-life integration, whatever. But I'm like, I've actually achieved it and it feels lovely. But why don't you, if that speaks to you, I'd love to hear a little bit about what is working for you when we are finding that equilibrium between both energies.
Hmm. I think I'm reading the chat because like your girl Elizabeth not over here. I'm like, all right, let's go,
Oh, we
Elizabeth.
love Elizabeth.
She
Shout out to Elizabeth.
knows what's up.
100%.
I'm reading, she's saying like people expect balance in the workplace, but it can't be done alone. And I think, that's not necessarily how do you balance yourself between masculine and feminine. Cause I don't know that you're always standing exactly in the middle of it, right? Like
Good
there's
point.
times when you're like, I gotta just get this thing done. I got a deadline. I got a timeline. It's gotta be like if you think about the toolkit, you're using the hammer. It's like the nail's right there. The hammer's the best tool. Ding, 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 ding. I'm getting it done. And then there's times, to Elizabeth's point, about not being able to do it alone. And earlier in the chat, I saw she mentioned around having support in playing with others, like being a team, which is more feminine. I mean, you could do all kinds of, I don't know. I don't want to get like super anthropological. Like,
Yes.
look at some of that stuff, like way back in time about how the women would work together to raise children while the men were out hunting. And when the men are out hunting, not that they're doing it all alone, but like they're on point, they're purposeful, they're driven, they're going for the kill. They're not necessarily like a whole cadre of them together. They might be off in different areas doing things, but the women, like, that is how they work. And like, not to be
Mm.
like TMI, but I feel like this is a show where it's like, I don't know if there is TMI, but like, when the women are menstruating, right? Like they're
Yeah.
like in a space taking care of each other while the other ones who are
Mm.
not are doing the things like tending the fire, cooking the fish,
Mm.
doing whatever it is. And so I think like I don't know. Like balance for me is so tricky because in my mind it's like I see the scale and like I'm a Libra. Um so
Tell us more.
I see the scale, right? And so it's like to keep them balanced, things have to be equal, right? You take one thing off and it's like, another thing off. And so you're doing this versus harmony. Like when you said like, how do you find the equilibrium between the two? Like, I think infinity, it's like, there's that tiny little crossover where you're like in that harmony, but there's a lot of space where you're in the masculine or you're in the feminine. And I think the awareness to really be like, oh, how am I showing up? Am I in my masculine? Am I in my feminine? What do you know? You're like, you're great at this, like asking yourself what you need right now. And knowing, like, I mean, you can make a little list, right? If you want like practical LinkedIn tips from Mandy and Emma, you can make I mean, I like lists too, so don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
You can make a list of like, when I'm feeling stressed out at work, what are my masculine go-tos? What are my feminine go-tos? Maybe it's like my masculine is like, I go for a run and then I come home and I soak in a bath. And so you're doing the like back and I almost put my cocktail. It's coffee, people. I get like very
no judgment. It's FML. If you had such a bad week, like I hope you're joining with whatever you need from the bath, maybe.
Yeah. Hey, look,
Yeah.
I've taken many things from my bathtub. Oh
my gosh.
Not this time.
So much. I love you so much. All right, let me ground in.
Yeah.
Because I think part of the infinity that you're talking about is the integration. And that's what I would like to see more space for in our workplaces, but our individual work cadences as well. So what I'm hearing from you, and tell me if this resonates, is that one is playing team. Because you were talking about the men going out and hunting, even if we hunt in packs, therefore we're more successful. They're doing that. The women were gathering together. So community, team, not trying to do it all by yourself. Like that is one way that if you're feeling stuck or anxious or overwhelmed, is to ask for help. And that takes a lot of courage. It takes vulnerability, and loneliness is an epidemic right now, especially in the United States. So it's okay if you feel like you don't have somebody to turn to, but that sounds like one key piece for you. The other piece I heard is space. Are you creating space? And especially for my peeps who work in tech, where it's like typically back-to-back calls or any type of sector, like back-to-back calls. Now I got to go pick up my kid. Now I got to go work, do the groceries and make dinner. Like our society does not incentivize or monetize or prioritize space. And yet it's so often the thing that's missing in our lives. I know, at least for me, like I worked with a sales coach, and it was when I was pregnant, and she was like, the first thing she said, show me your calendar. I was like, share screen. Back to back to back to back to back. She goes, I need you to put 3 2-hour blocks for white space. I was like, girl, get out of here. I do not have 6 hours to dedicate to this. I call, no thank you. And I did it, and it was like magic. It's like, wait, I'm actually getting clear on the things that I felt blocked on because I took 2 hours off and I'm not looking at a screen. Whoa. So those are the things I heard from you. Does that resonate, or is there anything else that's coming up for you as you share?
Yeah, for sure. I'm laughing because I've had this similar experiences with coaches where they're like, just white space on either side. And I'm like, listen, lady.
I don't have time.
I know. Hey, listen, like that was I would say maybe that's been like a running story of my life until like maybe I don't know, 90 days ago. Right? Like I don't have time.
Celebrate that.
I don't have time. I'm doing. And like to bring it back to masculine and feminine, like that's the culture. it's the masculine. Like, if you're not performing, if you're not hitting those deadlines, if you're not present on those calls, if you're not on camera, on point, on fire, like for
All
your
the
team,
time.
for your work, for your whole company, for your partner, for your children, for your community, for the school teacher who's like, I didn't get their homework done, blah, 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 blah. All the things, like, at some point you gotta, like, I know this is hard because, like I said, I got a couple good decades of experience with it, but, like, at some point you gotta shut that shit down.
Yeah.
It is not good for your health. Like, also, I know I've lived that, like, my adrenals fried, you know?
Yeah.
It is not good for your health. And so finding another way, whether it's support, and, like, I love your coaching on that, and, like, I'm laughing because literally, Emma introduced me as her first coach, but this girl's coaching me all week this week of like, "Just ask for support." I'm like, "Get off my case." Right? It's like, I think that comes back to the awareness of like, "Oh, crap, I'm doing that thing that I do where I'm like, I dig a little hole and I'm, like, in there and I'm like, 'Just leave me alone, I'm processing,'" and, like, it's like
Get
little
away
guy
from me.
little goblin. It's like, it's having the awareness to be like, "Oh, okay, this person, is pointing out a blind spot, serving me, like, supporting me and up leveling." So, back to community,
Mm.
creating it together. Like, we're not in a society that values that feminine energy. And it's like, it's so effed up because that is the most powerful of the two energies. Like, if you think
Mm.
about it, it's like the feminine is what conceives, what carries, what delivers, what nurtures life and creation. Like, that's what it's all about. It's like only the feminine can create that.
Mm.
So, like, it's almost like we got it backwards, sort of to Elizabeth's earlier point. We have it backwards. Like, we're like, how much you're producing is your worth versus how much you're creating in harmony with other people and being in relationship.
Yeah.
Like, that's what
Yeah.
I mean, and it's like we know this, like, back to the animal instinct, we know this intuitively because we always say, like, on people's deathbeds, they're not questioning, like, "Oh, I shoulda worked an extra week, at IBM." No offense, IBM, love you. But, example, "I shoulda worked an extra week." They're not saying that, they're saying, like, "I wish I didn't miss those baseball games of my kid. I wish I didn't miss, like, the prom with my prom pictures with my daughter." Like, they're not talking about hitting markers and milestones and performance things that are gonna show up on a performance review so that they can get the extra $1,000.
Yeah.
It's relationship, and so it's like intuitively, we know, like, the feminine is where it's at, but it's
And
got,
it's so
like,
fun.
it's got totally, and it's got a bad rap, right? It's like, "Oh,
Yeah.
it's weak," or, whatever the old, that's expired mindset stuff, and so, the new mindset is creation, collaboration, like, I don't wanna keep throwing out cliches, but, like, you always go faster together than you do on your own, and, like, I know I'm taking my own coaching here, you know? I'm calling you Ray this weekend. Um, it's so it's like we know that intuitively. I don't know if I answered your question now, I'm just like,
I mean, this is FML. It's great. We go where the conversation goes.
we go where it
I
goes.
do I do wanna be mindful of time.
Yeah.
Bring it back to masculine structure, time, but
Uh,
not in a white supremacist way where we use time to weaponize against
yeah,
people. People don't
this
do that. Don't do that. Don't get mad at people when they're, like, a minute late, and don't feel like you have to apologize for it because that's just upholding the systems of oppression, but I do want to be mindful of people's time. So,
yeah.
let's thank you for all of that, Mandy. Let's turn to the chat.
Mhm.
I'd love to hear what is one aha moment or takeaway, something that is resonating with you, and then I'll let you know where you can find us next. But this conversation was amazing. It's
Mhm.
exactly the intention I wanted, which is to talk about the things that we are not talking about on LinkedIn posts. We talked about masculine and feminine energy. We talked about predator, prey, animalistic mindset. We talked about how to integrate more space, more community into your daily routines and how you navigate conflict. And more importantly, we're here to go with the flow and follow our intuition while also trusting in our ability to create results. I just put that one there as a little bit more caveat. I'm not seeing anything in the chat right now, but hopefully it does come through. I know there's a bit of delay. So let's talk about what's next, y'all. I'm going to drop into the chat a newsletter sign up link if you want to join my email list. We are going to be here on LinkedIn Live for the next 8 weeks, FML, bringing in different guests to have candid conversations about career, work, and life. Mandy, my love, thank you so much for joining. Is there anything else you want to share with our fabulous audience?
No, I feel like the theme that I keep coming back to is awareness, like just being present to what's going on for you and around you. Also, I'm like, I should have worn cheetah print because predator prey. I'm like, maybe if you
Ooh.
next time.
Next time. Absolutely. Y'all, thank you so much for tuning in. Please feel free to put in the chat what resonated with you. We'll be bringing different conversations each week, inviting on guests, having candid conversations. Thank you so much for your participation in the chat. Be sure to join email list to get all the information, and we'll talk to you soon. Just blow them a kiss. Mwah. Love you.